order the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call for this special meeting. Myers? Here. Bowen? Here. Imhoff? Here. Burnwell? Here. Art Hubbard is here, and also our zoning administrator, Dave Kelsey. We do have our full quorum, and the entire board is present. Next item is to approve the agenda. Everyone should have gotten a copy of that. Any questions or comments? I do have a couple reorderings and additions I would like to add, which we can do for a special meeting, being that the entire board is here. First thing, at the top of new business, I would like to add just a quick discussion on a notice of public hearing we received for a brownfield plan in the village of Lakeview. Just want to make quick mention of that. So that's the first thing I would like to add at the start of new business. I also want to add, just below that, we got a little snafu in our June regular meeting date that I noticed since our last meeting. I want to get that corrected. Add that, and then the text amendment that we have under new business, let's move that to the bottom of those resolutions. Consider the text amendment as the fourth item. And then also
Text is T-E-X.
Text, T-E-X-T, okay. Yep. And then also want to add below camping permit administration, consideration of our existing fee schedule. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda with those changes. Is there support? Support. Motion's been made and supported. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. A quick announcement, Dave just shared with me before the meeting. The road commission has scheduled the brine or chloride application for tomorrow in our township. That should be a double pass on all dirt roads. So just a heads up on that. Next item is moving into public comment on agenda items only. So if it's on anything on the agenda, this is your time for public comment. 3 minutes per person, and just please state your name and what township you're from.
I'm on agenda.
I'm Alicia Bigler, and I'm from Cato Township, and I am here to talk about the rural residential to commercial. I'm asking that our parcel be omitted from being commercial. Number one, it's not buildable for commercial. There's the county drain that goes through it. There's 2 pieces of swamp on each side of it. Therefore, there's nothing there space-wise that could be built commercially. Number 2, I did speak to my lawyer, and he advised me that it's not in our favor to have it be commercial. And number 3, I did talk to the assessor, and he said that as long as he was the assessor, that it would stay in the tax classification that it is now. But if we get another assessor down the road, it's not guaranteed that that person would not change my classification to commercial down the road. So that could change my taxes. I mean, we're agricultural, and I know it's, rural residential to commercial. We are going to stay ag. I never plan on selling it, never plan on building on it. So I'm just asking if you could change your line and take our parcel out of there. It's 004-017-008-10 for the Henry L. Barronwell Trust parcel. And also the planning commission did say that it would be okay to take it off and redraw the lines the other night at the meeting on Wednesday. And I believe you also asked the attorney, and she said that because it's not in the middle and it's on the outskirts, that it wouldn't be a problem to redraw the lines and take that parcel out.
I will just add to that the map, that was the recommendation from the planning commission, so the map has been updated, that has been posted on our website, so that will be up for the board's consideration. Okay. We'll discuss more about that when we get there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment on agenda items?
Hey, Lane Lepping, Cato Township, Village of Lakeview. I didn't get a chance to didn't take the chance to come to the, planning commission meeting. I kind of know a little bit about what's going on, cause I've kept up with it on Facebook. So I appreciate the information that's been kind of broadcasted out, so thank you for that. Jamie does a great job with the videos and so on and so forth. Clarification, and what concerns me is the commercial district. And I talked a little bit with Marcy earlier today. From a realtor standpoint and an appraiser standpoint, when a current residential use is in a commercial district, when a lender gets involved with a commercial residential use, something that's non-conforming, when an appraiser comes waltzing into that situation, they ask the zoning administrator, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, that you get asked this question that, I know you're not supposed to interact here, but, the appraiser will ask and zoning administrator whether or not that structure, if it gets demolished by an act of God or by fire, can it be rebuilt to its current use? It's not gonna affect the current owners today, cause probably zoning appeals or the zoning board will allow a permit to rebuild. But what will happen is these properties, when they sell, are gonna put their houses on the market in the future. And future mortgages are gonna come on board, and those future mortgages are gonna get blocked because that question's gonna get asked, and you don't have any provision from what I see in commercial district for single-family residential. You don't allow single-family residential in permissible use or even in special use.
Finish your comment, then
And the comment is, it scares me because you don't allow for it.
Yep.
And the appraisal standpoint, they're gonna come in and say, you have to allow for that in order for us to allow for residential appraisal or allow a residential mortgage to be allowed for that.
Yep. So there is a section 3.37 in our general provisions that does speak to residential, properties in a commercial district, which is something we'll discuss, as we get into it, but I appreciate that comment, and, so there is provision, in there for residential.
Okay, I mean, if you've allowed for it, that's cool.
So, we'll, anything else?
No, that just was concerning me in the commercial district.
Yeah, and Dave, I think you have your zoning ordinance book, so when we get there, we can take mention of that.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments, Lane, appreciate it. I just wanna make sure we discuss that here. Okay, anybody else?
Are you taking questions on everything that's on the
On
agenda?
the, yep, agenda items only, and then,
And that includes the new zoning, correct?
yes, yep.
I have a question about, the Lake Residential District.
Can you state your name?
My name is Catherine Lockwood. I live on Cherry Street. And, underneath your permitted uses, it no longer has like, home-based businesses. And I do contract mechanical design for my house. I don't have customers come in, but would that exclude me from being able to continue doing that?
You're saying in the, chapter 19,
Yes, because on the previous zoning, that allowed for home-based businesses, but that's no longer in this permitted uses.
okay, I've written that down, and we'll have, I have a copy of it in my stuff too, you might not have it, Dave, in your chapter 19, because that was a recent addition. So we'll discuss that when we.
And I have one more question.
Sure, yep.
Okay, it's pertaining to the camping part of it
Yep.
and the permitting. I'm a residential landowner there and I have a home there. And my question is, should there be a notation that it's for vacant properties that have to, apply for the permit? Because if my granddaughter comes up on a Friday night and decides for the weekend and decides on Saturday she wants to put a tent up in the backyard and sleep in the backyard, how am I supposed to get a permit for that? You know, that's,
Well, camping regulations were adopted back in December. We are talking tonight about the administration of the permit, so, I'm gonna write your comment down on that, when we get to that section, but as far as making a change, that would have to go through a whole new public hearing with the planning commission, and not saying that it couldn't if the board wants to,
right,
but tonight is, the rezoning and the administration of how much is the permit gonna be, what if somebody wants to change their permit, that type of thing.
okay, so you
But
guys
I think,
already,
I do appreciate your comment, and it's worth talking about when we get to that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right, we're gonna move on from public comment on agenda items and go right into new business, which I messed up the order, so we'll see if I remember what I changed. First thing is this notice received regarding, brownfield property. So we just received this from, the county. Notice of public hearing on the adoption of a brownfield plan for 9640 North Greenville Road, Lakeview, Michigan, residential redevelopment, project pursuant to and in accordance with the Brownfield Redevelopment Financing Act, 381 of the Public Acts of State of Michigan of 1996. So this is the property, I believe it's owned by Tamarack Meadows, behind the, Chef's Restaurant and the community church there. You've seen some, I don't know if you'd call them double wides, Marcy, or, maybe single wides in there.
Right.
A lot of people refer to it as a trailer park, which I think that was what the original intent was for that. Well, they now are looking at, making that, I talked to the village manager, because this is within the village, so it's subject to the village's zoning. But because, we assess taxes, from the township on village properties, we are being notified, that the County Board of Commissioners is holding this public hearing on Tuesday, May 27th at 4 o'clock at the, Jack Van Harn Boardroom Administrative Building in Stanton. And essentially what the village manager, how he explained it to me, is they are looking to make that more of like a gated community with stick-built modulars, of varying sizes, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 4 to 6 different models, a total of 135 units. So, but what they're applying for is this tax credit through 2030, because it's a brownfield, development. And it's been approved by the village council, it's been approved by the Brownfield Authority Board, and now the county has to hold this public hearing. And, again, from talking with the village manager, this is something that would be very good for both the village and the township, because it's gonna increase the tax base. Each one of those parcels would be assessed at its own taxable value. Now they would get this tax credit through 2030, is my understanding. So we would get some taxable value gain for those next 5 years, and then a big gain after that credit period, is over. So I'm gonna have, we'll post this on the website in case anybody wants to attend the public hearing, but, I just, wanted to make sure the board, was aware of it, and perfect opportunity at tonight's special meeting. Next item was a motion, we need a motion, to change our June regular meeting date. It was actually, I've been rolling forward resolutions for this upcoming, final meeting where we approve our, meetings for the next year. We had actually approved that regular meeting to be June 14th, and I think we did that to give ourselves a little extra time, because it's budget season. But somehow on the website, we've been reporting it as June 9th, so we need to officially vote to make that, amend that regular meeting schedule, to be June 9th, which is what's been posted, but that's not what we approved last year. So I will make a motion that we approve a change to the June regular meeting schedule, from June 14th to June 9th. Is there support for that?
Support.
Motion's been made and supported. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. So those couple of housekeeping items, and now we are going to move into, consideration for, under new business for these 4 resolutions that were recommended by the planning commission for, 3, map amendments, and then a couple small provisions changing in the text amendments in the zoning ordinance. So the planning commission held a public hearing last week on May 14th, and a copy of the public comments from those hearings has been provided to the board. Before we get into those, I just want to thank the planning commission for their work on these resolutions. The mapping project is the culmination conclusion of a 3-year project to update both the township's master zoning land use plan and also update our maps, which were very difficult to read, hand-drawn in some cases, and we've learned some things. We'll get into kind of how this project evolved, but it was a lot of hard work and working. I also want to thank our planning firm, McKenna and Associates out of Grand Rapids, who helped us to take this outdated map and put it together where we can see clear boundaries and identify the parcels, and also some very nice sub-maps that kind of blow up certain areas so you can get a better feeling for what's in what district. So just wanted to give a couple shout outs there. So we do have these 4 resolutions. We'll consider each one individually. I do want to take a moment to ask the board if you have any questions or comments on the public hearing comments that were made on May 14th. Anyone have anything to add on those? I will reiterate, and I also talked to our assessor, so I think we might be getting wires crossed a little bit somewhere, but zoning and tax assessing are 2 separate items. That was the #1 question. Will this affect my taxes? A parcel is assessed for tax purposes, and they have to follow, the assessor has to follow the General Property Tax Act and how he assesses property. All assessors do. They have to maintain their certification, they have to follow the law. And the law says that you assess a parcel based on how it's currently being used, not on how it could be used. So that's why you gotta have the distinction between zoning and tax assessing. And I also confirmed that with our attorney as well. So that was the #1 question that we've received. It was a few at the public hearing, but I think you've also gotten some calls from people asking about that. What zoning does is it places particular areas into these districts so we can write specific zoning related rules for each district. There was also a comment related to property currently enrolled in the Farmland and Open Space Preservation Program, PA 116. Our attorney says that it has no impact, but I can respect that you got a different opinion on that. In the planning commission, as mentioned earlier, did vote to remove that 1 parcel that Alicia mentioned from the proposed rezoning in the commercial district. So anything else from the board, any comments or anything before we dive into these? Okay, hearing none. First off, we have a resolution recommending approval of an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the Lake Residential District. So, brief summary, this was, again, from that master land use project that we invested a significant amount of money to get the master plan updated. It's required by law to be updated at least every 5 years, and ours was over 12 years old, and nothing had, first nobody could find it, and then when we did find it, it was 12 years old. One of the things that came out of that is we do not have a zoning district that specifically addresses lake communities, and there's very unique characteristics of lake communities, very high density areas. Back in December, the zoning ordinance was amended to create regulations for a lake residential district, which was basically a shell, because properties have to be rezoned. You can't just, oh, we have a lake residential district. That's what phase 2 was, to follow the proper procedures to get properties into the lake residential. But first we had to write the regulations. Now, I do wanna bring up the question about the home occupations. Let's pull my, cause that's interesting, I'm surprised that wouldn't have been on there. Anybody have that handy? I have it, I just have to take me a second to find it. There it is. So what we're saying is that, Dave, do you have section 7.04 that you can pull up?
Yeah, right here, give you,
Do you have a permitted use or a special, I guess it would be permitted for home occupations?
permitted use of single-family farm home occupations,
You do have it,
yes,
Okay.
except noted in section 3.14.
which is probably where it gives the details about home occupations.
Yeah, 3.14.
Yeah. I would think that would be something, especially in this day and age. There are specific rules for home occupations and what he just mentioned, section, or chapter 3. You have those,
Yeah.
but yeah, that looks like it was just a oversight that didn't get added in, to permitted uses. So, I think, I guess the best, easiest course of action would be to, direct the planning commission, and we have our chairman here tonight, Joe Main, to tack that on to one of your next projects, to get that added. In the meantime, this board, if the board is open to that, we can, vote to allow that as it's stated.
Yes, I think we should.
I think we need to memorialize that in a motion though. Let's see if there's anything else here, so what we have on our map is, in the Town Line Lake area, those boundaries, those are rural residential currently. And the Lake Forest area down in the southeast corner of the township is agricultural residential. So both of those boundaries on the map, both around the lake and an expansion of the outer lake would be going to into the Lake Residential District. What was the other comment was camping, and we'll get into that. Anybody have any questions or comments, on the board? Before we get to the rezoning motion, I guess, I gotta think of how I wanna word this, so, motion, to, I guess, allow home occupations and permitted use in our district, subject to section, what was that, 3.14, Dave? Home occupations? Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to allow home occupations as a permitted use in the Lake Residential District, subject to regulations in section 3.14. Is there support for that? Support. Motion has been made and supported. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Myers?
Yes.
Bohm?
Yes.
Imhoff?
Yes.
Burnwald?
Yes.
Clark Hubbard? Yes. Motion carries. So we'll make sure you take that to your next planning commission meeting. David is the board liaison on the planning commission, so he will, take that, and of course Joe's here also, hear that. Okay, back to the rezoning. Okay, should this be adopted, the sequence we're in, this would be 2025-05 for the ordinance number. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-05, an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the Lake Residential District as presented by the Planning Commission?
motion to, approve the resolution recommending approval of the ordinance to amend zoning map regarding Lake Residential District.
As presented by
As
the.
presented.
Okay, I'll support that. Further discussion? We'll do roll call. Bernwald,
Yes.
Clark Hubbard, yes. Imhoff,
Yes.
Bowen,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
motion carries. Next, we have a resolution recommending approval for an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the suburban residential district. If approved, this would be ordinance number 2025-06. Just a brief overview, the planning commission felt that district's rules gave more flexibility for some of the higher density neighborhoods around the village of Lakeview. As far as dimensional characteristics as regarding setbacks and other items. So that was the gist of those rezonings. Any questions or comments from the board on that? Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-06, an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the suburban residential district?
I make a motion to adopt the 2025.
Dash oh six.
I just say so moved as I
So moved.
repeat it. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and supported. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Myers,
Yes.
Bowen,
Yes.
Imhoff.
Yes.
Bernwald,
Yes.
Clark Hubbard, yes. Motion carries. Third, we have a resolution recommending approval for an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the commercial district. If approved, this would be ordinance number 2025-07. You will notice that in the planning commission's recommendation, they had, struck out, the northern 524 feet of West Youngman Road, parcel 004, 017, 008-10. And that has also been updated on the proposed, commercial zoning district map. And that is just, the parcel that was just west on Youngman Road, south of M46. Portion of that parcel, 524 feet deep. Little bit of a backstory here, I think it's worth noting. Originally, the commercial district was not part of the rezoning project at all. The township was satisfied with the existing boundaries, based on this, zoning map dated June 12th of 2012, which included your parcel, which included all the way, east of M91 all the way out to Fitzner Road on both sides of the road. It's been treated as commercially zoned for the past 12 years, 13 years. In going back through this project, trying to understand the sequence of when things were rezoned, what we determined was that there was no record of a public hearing ever being held on that. However, the map was hand-drawn, in that all of that was included. And we said, you know, this is gonna add a lot of administrative work to this project, but these people need to be notified that their property is zoned commercial, or has been treated as zoned commercial. Now, we took whatever that recommendation had been back there, back in 2012, that is what was wanted for the township, and so that's why you see in these maps, the, what we ended up having to do to determine, okay, what was, changed in 2012. We went back and, Ginger's, husband was the former zoning administrator, and in his files, we found the map from, May 2001 when the zoning ordinance was officially adopted. And that is the striped pink or red, however you wanna say it, and we've denoted that in the key as the 2001 zoning overlay. So that's why those parcels were not considered part of the rezoning, because they were part of the original zoning ordinance. But this other stuff, that wasn't done properly. You can't just change the map without holding a public hearing, publishing it in the newspaper, and notifying neighbors within 300 feet, which neighbors within 300 feet is a little bit loosely, because when you have more than 11 contiguous parcels in a block, you don't have to send those individual. Like you guys would have got one because you weren't part of a block of 11 contiguous parcels. Everyone else got a postcard. So just to clarify, that was our best, trying to be as transparent as we could. I think there was also a question from the public hearing, again, regarding those pink striping or red striping, however you wanna say it, for your property, to the east of Youngman Road, which again was not subject to this rezoning project. How did the 524 feet, come to be, which takes those parcels right up along the road and goes 524 feet back, and which comes into your parcel, not just, I don't have the exact dimension, but it comes into that a little bit. And how that was determined, again, we did the best that we could with what we had, working with McKenna, our planning firm, and the industrial, we have just a very small industrial zoning district. It's where Steeplechase is. And those properties are industrial based on that 2001 map. And so what the planning firm did was take the southern boundary of that, and on the map from 2001, you can see it goes due west, just horizontal line from that southern boundary of those properties. And that's how we could determine it was roughly 524 feet. So, you know, we did the best we could with what we had. If that's something that, you know, you're concerned about in the future, that would be something you could apply for, to have it rezoned. But again, all of this has really been treated as commercial, since 2012, and there really hasn't been any impact, you know, to people's taxes or you know, your PA 116 status. But that is what the map has been in use. But we again said, nope, we got to do it. It's gonna cost. It did, like I said, it added a lot more administrative work for noticing and mapping. But we said we gotta let people know. So that's how that came to be. And again, that was all the way to Fitzner Road. You'll notice on the other side it says 660 feet on both sides of the road. That was actually in the Planning Commission's minutes from back in either end of 2011 or 2012. So that's where we came up with, that's what their intent was, what they wanted to do. Just doesn't appear that they did it properly. So I thought that backstory was important. Sure I covered everything in my notes, kind of got off track a little bit. Did the board have any questions on all that? I know it's been discussed previously. Couple other things to add, kind of speaking to Lane's comment to farming use. You know, commercial farming is covered under the Right to Farm Act, whether it's a listed use or a permitted use. Commercial farming is subject to the Right to Farm Act, so you know, have the right to farm. And any others are brought in as a legally non-conforming use in a commercial district if you want to farm. So that was a specific question I wanted to ask the attorney. Residential homes are allowed in the commercial district, section 3.37, you have that handy, Dave. And then as far as if somebody's house burns down, we're all subject to this. If I have a legally non-conforming parcel and my house burns down, Chapter 16 speaks to that, what happens, and it's a little strange, but this is, according to our attorney, how most zoning ordinances are written, because the goal over time is to get non-conforming parcels conforming. We don't like having non-conformities. So there's some language in, we won't get into detail, but in Chapter 16 that, again, we're all subject to. If the total cost to rebuild is over a certain percentage, you have to comply with the current setbacks. You can't just build in your footprint from before. But if it's below the threshold, you can. So, these things are covered in our ordinance. Again, all residential homes in the commercial are grandfathered in, subject to chapter 16 like anything else, and new homes can get, a special use permit, to build a new home in commercial. And I did ask, and this is maybe something the planning commission could, again, tack onto one of their amendments. I said, well, it really doesn't talk about minimum square footage, and she said that you would default to what it was before, which was rural residential, the square footage of the house, that was allowed previously. I'm going, again, not to keep adding stuff to the planning commission, but, you know, a special land use permit, and this kind of came up as I was reviewing the fees that we charge. There's a lot to a special land use permit. You have to have a public hearing, you have to publish in the newspaper, you have to notify all the neighbors within 300 feet, and the fee is $500. So where a regular zoning permit is $50 to get up, to build a home. So I think that's something we might wanna look at as the planning commission. I mean, I get it's a commercial district, but that seems a little stiff, whatever you wanna say. If somebody wanted, you know, say I had a piece of vacant property and I wanna build my home on it, and now I have to pay $500. I think that's something we might wanna take a look at, just making that, if it's a new build, making that just subject to a regular zoning permit. Does that make sense?
That's the cost in the commercial district, is what you're saying, to build a residential home.
According to 3.37, you have to get a special land use permit, and on that fee schedule, I think that's what you had there. A special land use permit, because there's so many hoops you have to jump through, they'd have to pay the fee of $500. And we'd have to have the public hearing and the planning commission. I don't think we would necessarily wanna go down that road. Maybe if we had a bunch of Walmarts and Myers all over the place, maybe it would be a different story, but that's not what we have. So again, and I also did wanna just, Alicia, as representative of ownership of that property, and you answered the question, but just kind of in light of the discussion, no effect the last 13 years, that you still would prefer to have that parcel left out.
And I can state I've just taken over this like 4 years ago when my dad passed. He did all of his own land management, I had nothing to do with it. And when he passed, it was kinda all dumped in my lap, so I was not aware of any of this actually until I got the letter in the mail, so. I can say that on my behalf, I'm learning a lot as I go. So Dad did a lot of his things on his own and I didn't know, so.
Yep, no, we're trying to be as transparent as possible and follow the rules, the laws of how these things have to happen. So that's kind of why you got the letter, so.
Yep, I understand.
We addressed your comment, Wayne?
Look, if you don't mind me asking out of order, but can you repeat if in the order of events, an appraiser is gonna ask the question, can it, hypothetically, if a house does get destroyed and they're in that district, how would they go about rebuilding? Would they have to go in front of a zoning board of appeals? Would they have to reapply and get a board to decide?
Well, again, that's not specific just to commercial, that's any district that has a legally non-conforming use at the time an amendment is made. You have to go back to chapter 16, which talks about the cost to rebuild, and building in the footprint will be based on the cost to rebuild. If it's over the threshold, the zoning ordinance says you have to comply with what that district says is your setbacks. If it's under, my understanding is you can build in a footprint. But that'd be any property, that's not, I mean,
Do they have to,
whether it's ag district, rural residential.
do they have to apply for that non-conforming like he was?
Well, I think that would be something our zoning administrator would check. You know, you would obviously be going back for a zoning permit, and list your setbacks and everything, and then Dave would, obviously, you would give him the scoop on what's going on and, what the estimated cost to rebuild would be, so. It would be facts and circumstances, I guess is what I'm trying to say, each individual would be different, but now if, that doesn't mean they couldn't ask for a variance, but, if say they were over the threshold, but they wanted to build in the footprint still, they could ask for a variance. Now we're trying to get away from just rubber stamping variances. We want our zoning rules to be enforced. Variances are meant to be given in very limited circumstances for very unique characteristics on a parcel, which maybe that, again, that would be up to the zoning board of appeals, their interpretation of what they think is unique.
I understand the differences in the setbacks, but just the fact that it's the use, this is a residential use in a commercial district, that would be the issue that the.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what we're saying, that we're gonna have the planning commission look at that. I mean, yes, they could, but they would have to, we need to clarify that they don't have to go get a special use permit, which is costly, that they would just be subject to a regular zoning permit.
But that area's been zoned commercial already, is that right?
What area?
Of
Is there
the section that is, we're right now it was already listed as commercial, you're just updating everything.
We're doing it correctly.
Yeah,
Right,
only,
so this-
on the original map, only, this is from 2001, only the, I don't know, it's 30-40 acres on the southeast corner of 91 and 46. On the 2001, when the ordinance was adopted, only that was in red.
And then the one in 2012 wasn't adopted properly, so at this point is not considered commercial, and we're making it commercial?
It is
My
currently
understanding that.
rural residential, and we are essentially updating the map to treat it how it's been treated the
Okay,
past 13
that's what,
years.
I was just wanting to get clarification.
The spirit of my concern is that the lender is gonna look at that and go, okay, now that I'm looking at doing a residential mortgage, a 30-year commitment on a mortgage, the potential could exist that this person's house could burn down in the course of that. And I have to, as a lender, rely on a municipality to go, hey, you might be having to jump through some hoops that maybe maybe there will be a decision made through a committee at some point as to whether or not we'll let you rebuild.
We're saying that you can have a residential home in the commercial district. What we're gonna have our planning commission look at is, can it just be a regular permitted use? We can't, chapter 16, again, that applies to everybody. And if that's
I don't
a
know
bigger
what chapter
conversation, if
16
we don't
relies
like chapter
really.
16, that's what talks about, the cost of, if you can build in the footprint of a non-conforming parcel. But the usage, yes, that's no question, it's just a matter of making that easier, which I feel like, is there pretty well consensus here that we would be supportive of
Oh, absolutely.
a regular permit versus having to make somebody get a special use? And I feel like the planning commission would likely be of the same, but.
Okay.
So if the lender understands what's going on and talks to Cato Township, they're gonna know that there should be no issue with lending, on a residential mortgage in the commercial district on a residential home.
And we do have, the planning commission is already working on its next project. It probably won't be until, after, late summer, but when they finish it up, but there's an opportunity to, any like little corrections like this, we can tack that on to a public hearing that's already scheduled, so we don't have to.
Well, the bugger of it is when you get in the heat of a transaction and you go, how soon can we get that addressed? You're gonna go, well, we'll put
So
that on
Wayne,
our,
what you're asking is,
We'll put
you
that
have
on.
it right there in front of your face, you can just throw it at the lender and say, there's gonna be no issue. That's kind of what you're looking for.
It is a rebuild letter, is what it was referenced to me by a lender, that there is actually a thing called a rebuild letter, and
We can look into that.
Right,
But yeah, my hope would be that we can just get the language changed, which again, residential use.
the kind of grandfathers that residential structure to be rebuilt. Not more than the footprint, not more than what it was, but
Yeah, but again, we can't just ignore chapter 16.
Understandable.
That's for anybody, whether, and maybe that's a bigger conversation, but it is very common what we have in chapter 16 according to our attorney,
okay.
so. But I will write down the rebuild letter. That's something, that could be expedited if we get into a
A tool
situation.
for Dave, if it's, if it complies with chapter 16, whatever that reads.
Okay, anything else on commercial district? Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-07, an ordinance to amend the zoning map regarding the commercial district?
So moved.
Motion's been made, is there support?
Support.
Motion's been made and supported, is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Bernwald?
Yes.
Clark Hubbard, yes. Imhoff?
Yes.
Bolam? Yes. Myers?
Yes.
Motion carries. And then the fourth of the planning commission's resolutions is, proposed text amendment resolution recommending approval of an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance regulating accessory building height and recodifying section 7.04. So, that's, again, this is kind of another tack on with regard to the accessory building height. We're getting just a ton of variance requests asking for higher than the 18 feet that we currently have for accessory buildings. That's non-agricultural. People wanted higher to store their campers or their boats, and so the township board has kind of said 25 feet was what we thought was reasonable, kick it back to the planning commission, and they agreed, and they are putting that in this whole the public hearing process, so we could kill two birds with one stone. And the other thing was, back in December, we took section 7.04, which was specific to Honeymoon Heights district regulations, and recodified that into the new chapter 19 on lake residential. So pretty straightforward. Again, we have the question about the home occupations that we will get that to the planning commission, and we've already voted it's allowed. And any other questions on that? And this will be 2025-08. So is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-08, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance regulating accessory building height and recodifying section 7.04?
So moved.
Motion's been made, is there support? Motion's been made and supported. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Myers?
Yes.
Bolam? Yes. Imhoff?
Yes.
Bernwald?
Yes.
Clark Hubbard, yes. Motion carries. Okay, so the next step is I gotta get this, notify the attorney to prepare the notice of adoption for publication in the newspaper, and then it can all be incorporated into our master file for zoning, the zoning ordinance in that. Next item. This is the camping permit administration. So, again, back in December, Planning Commission had recommended regulations on camping that apply specifically to the Lake Residential District. And one of those was included having to get a camping permit. There was a lot of complaints of we can't enforce the 14 days that's allowed for camping, and want some rules on it. So the Planning Commission researched, made some recommendations, worked with the attorney. Now we have parcels in this Lake Residential District, so camping permits can now be applied for those parcels, for those who want to apply. And I guess I first off want to emphasize that there's likely going to be a learning curve in this first year, and likely some need to be somewhat flexible and give some grace, because we tried our best to get the word out with those postcards and let people know. This is we are not a township that can afford to have someone patrol it and enforce zoning regulations, so a lot of it is complaint-based, or if Dave is out inspecting a zoning permit and he sees something, you know, that may be in violation, but we obviously just don't have the money to pay someone to patrol. So, I guess I just wanna emphasize that this first year, we're gonna see how it goes and, you know, make adjustments as necessary, but there was a complaint, there were complaints and a need, and this is what we're gonna, give it a try to not totally outlaw it, but also try to regulate it. At a previous meeting, we didn't vote, but we had kicked around the idea of making the permit fee the same as, the permit, any zoning, the regular zoning permits, which is $50. Our attorney says that's a reasonable fee to charge. I guess some questions on the administration of that, and I do have a copy of the permit in your materials. But this was also, the permit application was approved back in December. Like if somebody administering this, you know, Dave's gotta kinda know what the board's expecting, so, if somebody at the start of the season says, okay, I know all my dates, my 14 days, they fill out their permit, they send it in with their $50, Dave issues a permit. What if somebody's like, well, I know I'm camping on Memorial Day, but I don't know what I'm doing the rest of the year? Is that a new permit and another fee? I think we talked about making that be the case. If you wanna do multiple permits, that's probably what it would be if you were in a campground. What's the board's thoughts on this?
I have lots of thoughts.
Do share.
I'd like to ask Dave too, are you familiar with any other townships that have permits for camping?
No, I know one that's, considering it now.
Considering it,
Doing
yeah.
But, something's probably gonna happen within the next month or two, because I guess they're, concerned
Yeah.
that a lot of people will go over to their township and do whatever they want, because they don't have anything at all on camping.
And the more these areas get developed, the more dense the locations, and the more, I guess, need to regulate, is kind of my feeling on it, but please go on.
Well, I'm sort of a day late and a dollar short, because I will admit that I didn't really look into any of this at all, or even think about what my opinions were much on it, because I was busy and other things. And, I'm not suggesting we change this or anything, because we've gone through so much to get it to this point, but I have some things that I'd like to add, like, if I pay taxes on a lot or two out there, and there's nothing on there, and you're gonna tell me I have to pay $50 just to camp for 14 days on my own property. That just doesn't set well with me personally. I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of people when they called me about the letters that they got and their different concerns about things, and I never had the opportunity to speak to anyone that was 100% for this, except for one individual that was coming to these meetings over and over again and complaining about it. Other than that, that's the only one that I ran across. I also then, once I got to feeling pretty strong about that, and I realized it's a little short or a little late now, but like Brandy said, this is a learning curve for us, and for this year, we have to go through this and see how it works out. Maybe there won't be any problems at all. But I looked up all the townships in Montcalm County, and most of them don't have lake residential districts, but they're getting them. I mean, I see that it's a few. But in particular, I wanted to look like at Montcalm Township because of Turk Lake, and they don't have any camping regulations at all for Turk Lake in that area that I could find. They don't have a lake residential district either. Is that correct?
I don't know about.
That's-
Lake
Oh, that's,
Township,
okay,
yeah.
all right. Winfield Township, from what I could determine, they have occasional camping by the property owner or their guests, and it's considered an accessory use. And different things that I looked at, I didn't see anything that looked anything like what, we were thinking about doing. And the other one I wanted to look at was Douglas Township, because Douglas has Clifford Lake and Dickerson Lake. And they don't have any in their zoning, there's nothing in their zoning. Now, that's not to say that there aren't HOAs out there or associations that will regulate it within a certain area, but as far as township zoning, there's none. Pine Township, same thing. Canadian Lakes, I even went up to look at the Canadian Lakes one, and it says, they have, CLPOC, whatever that is, their Canadian Lakes Community Association, and they have a lot of different rules and restrictions on camping and use of recreational vehicles, and that's within that, their associations. And it says, members or guests arriving in motorhomes, campers, or trailers, if staying more than 4 days, shall park these vehicles at the campground if space is available. So in other words, if they're good, they can park in the driveways or the side yards. I'm assuming that's what that means, for 4 days, but after 4 days, then they're asked to park in the campground.
Right, and there are vacant lots up there, you can't camp at all, you can't do anything.
You can't.
And that goes for like Lake Miramichi, same thing, it's always been that way,
Is
they
that-
don't allow.
Is that a township zoning, or is that like a lake
That's
association?
a lake association
Yes,
zoning.
that's kind of
correct.
what I was
Yeah, so
looking at,
it's-
yeah.
Right, so it's not a township thing, it
Right.
is. So we may end up, Township, what we're doing, we could be the leader on this, because it sounds like that they're, well, it's always been 14 days from my understanding, because when we, obviously Lane, we sell lots over at Town Line Lake. And we've checked into this, most of the agents have, when we're going and selling these lots, because around lakes, that's the first question people ask. They're looking for a vacant lot to put their camper on, to camp. And I tell you, they would sell for a lot more money if that was the case around here. Six Lakes, I've done a couple lots over there on the lakes and Six Lakes, and there was one that I had for sale that had electric, and it had a well on it. And there was a camper there, actually, it's right by your place, yep, I don't even know if that camper is still there, but that camper stayed there for years, am I correct?
Yeah,
And it's still there?
yep.
And there's no regulations over there for anything. So somebody actually will buy that before they buy something in Town Lake, because they can camp
Right.
there. They don't wanna build, at least not at this point, but they would like to camp,
So
so,
there's not a lot of use to having a vacant lot.
well,
I mean,
that's why the
for
lots at Town Line Lake run for $2,000 a lot
Yeah, for
sometimes,
14
or they go to
days.
tax sales.
Yeah.
And Dave, would
So-
you agree that, especially on the north side of the lake, is very much developed in the outer skirts compared to a lot of other lakes and
On
other
Town Line?
townships? Yeah, on Town Line.
Oh, yeah, I would
It-
say so.
There's a
Yeah.
ton of parcels in that those subdivisions out
A
there.
lot of them,
So-
and a lot of tax sales go on.
Mhm. So we can't change anything in the camping rules, that was adopted, again, that would be something the planning commission would have to relook at.
Can I say something, Brandon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there is, the 14 days has always been in there, it's come up to us, somebody moved in to a new home, and they had neighbors that, I don't know what happened, but they brought a camper in, and they started supposedly raising heck next door, and they come in and absolutely demanded us to not allow camping at all. I mean, that was just, came to the planning commission, absolutely did not want any camping, brought people in that said they didn't want it, and restricted to no camping, cause we know that, I mean, if you wanna have what, so then the next question is, they wanted a way for Dave to police it, because say you have your 4 days, Dave's not gonna go around, well, they moved this in on this day, it's a he said, she said thing, when it started, when it stopped, so we had to have some type of permit for them to fill out to get the 14 days, and then it'll say, well, now we have a date that you're allowed to be there and a day you're allowed to leave, and put them down here, you have your 14 days you can pick, and that was just, they still weren't happy, the person that come in, they still were not happy that we did allowed camping, but at least left it the 14 days in a way that Dave can police it. And I don't know how else, we figured that we talked, it was a heated meeting for us to try to figure out, but this was our best trial of getting it, because we both, our planning commission all said 99% of the people that camp are fine, it's the people, now, I mean, they could somebody could move a house and build next door and be just as bad as somebody living in the camper, it's not the people camping, it's whoever the people is that's gonna live there, so that's why we did not wanna say no to camping, so there's all sides of this, but a lot of people didn't come to the meeting to find out what was all discussed on the planning commission side, so.
So we're not changing the 14
No.
days, it's always been there.
Just a
It's
way
gonna
to
be-
police it, and,
Right, we're changing a permit, we're getting a permitting process.
and it's from the person that owns the lot, is the only one that can get the lot, because, or get the permit,
Permit,
because
correct.
otherwise, any of their niece, nephew, whatever you wanna call it, to get one, then you can't say no, cause if it's right on the bottom, if there's any problem with it, then it's revoked for the rest of the year for a whole nother 365, and then that'll take care of the people that are, I mean, you wanna call bad, whatever.
So what we're trying to do is just talk about the cost of
Yes.
permit. We're talking about the cost of permit and how, obviously, policing that would only be if there was a complaint. The process is gonna go to Dave Kelsey when they make that application out, and we're trying to do this online to make it easy, I mean,
Well, the permit would be online, they
The
could
permit
get it
would
down,
be online.
get it today, so.
right. My opinion is, maybe make $25, and, they can do the whole season, the whole 14 days on one permit if they'd like, that's $25. If they don't, and they come in, a few times during the summer, because they don't know when they're camped, I think it should be $25 for each permit. That's my opinion.
So $25 for the whole season,
Or as they need it to
or,
permit,
or per permit.
permit, correct.
Okay.
Depending on if they put what date, if they put
Right,
a
so
date
they
down.
can do $125 for the whole season, and they're gonna give you their dates. Now you have that, and now if there's a complaint, that's when you end up then leasing it and going to
Yeah,
check
and
it
they
out.
are supposed to post their permit right
Correct.
at the site.
Right, so the neighbors are gonna know when they're there or when they're not gonna be there.
And what if they wanna call up and change their dates 3 times? Kind of a as we go, figure that out, or?
That's gonna be a learning, like you say, Randy, a learning curve, yep.
This
let's-
is supposed to be posted on the permit, so then you, on the
Right.
premises, so then you gotta go out and change the,
Right, so really,
who's gonna do that? I
if
mean,
you, right, if we talk about that, then that's changing, so there's your $25, because you are, really, you're putting in for a new permit, is what you're doing.
Okay, so $25 full season, or if you wanna get individual permits as you go, and if you change your permit, $25.
We have to watch that, cause, I like to think that most people aren't like this, but if somebody gets their 14 days all set up ahead of time, and then they say, well, I wanna change it, they'll apply for another permit, and then they might still use all the old dates, Howard.
How do you know they
Yeah.
actually used the old days or not?
I would make them write up a new permit with the,
Right,
the new
do a
dates.
permit,
And
correct,
void the
and they
old ones
would-
somehow.
they
and
would
void
have
out
to
the other
post
ones,
that.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah, these situations, it'll evolve, but we need a core set of rules here. A comment that was made when we adopted this back in December, that has kind of stuck with me, that is permits for tents. Now, you have to have a bathroom facility, which could be one of those little, not a porta john, but I mean, people can have
a little tent
porta
with
john.
5-gallon pail.
yeah,
Not
exactly.
And the comment the guy made was, well, I live there and I own the lot across the road and it has a pole barn with a bathroom, why do I need to get a permit when my nephews come up and camp? Or, I think what you were saying is you, on your house, property where you have a house.
Facilities that might,
Yeah,
others-
now, if it was a camper, somebody was trying to come in and back into your lot, I might hesitate on that one because, people's views and setbacks and stuff, but if we're just talking a tent. I guess I'm leaning towards, I want the board's opinion, could this be another thing that we maybe have the planning commission, we not enforce it on tents for this first year?
On a residential lot that has a residential home.
That's what we're
Right.
part of Honeymoon
Correct.
Heights Association, and we go to all the meetings, and that's what we were discussing at our
And we
Honeymoon
understand
Heights.
the vacant lot.
Yes.
Yes,
thing,
yes,
But
we
the
get
fact that, like I said, if my granddaughter comes and wants to put a tent up on Saturday,
Yeah.
we have a bathroom.
Or I have a
We have,
11-year-old that wants to camp.
everything there, to where we don't have to worry about facilities, it's just a
Right.
tent, for.
I came across some wording too that,
Cause
I
we
don't
allow,
have it here, that said that when it's a tent like that, it's used for sleeping purposes only. Like, so they're cooking and they're
In your
been
home.
doing everything in
Yes,
the house.
yes.
And the tent is just for sleeping purposes.
our Honeymoon Heights rules are the same, it's 14 days.
Mhm.
We don't have a permit fee out there, but we have 14 days, and, that's what they get for the year out there.
So could we, I still think a tent, should be subject to, you can't put it right up on your neighbor's line and, you gotta still be subject to the rules, but I haven't really had any complaints about tents, it was about the campers, so, could we as a board, similar to what we did on the home occupations, vote to not enforce, for this first, until the planning commission has a chance to look at it again and kind of revisit that, which I think that was in the template that they had gotten from the attorney. We not enforce, the tent permits, whether it's a vacant parcel or a parcel that has a house.
I don't, I
Parcels,
think I would,
yeah.
I would use
It
it
could be a
as,
vacant parcel that is, part of your property.
Property. Yeah.
Then that's fine, because that's continuous to.
If they
to your
have
home.
Yeah.
a resident.
Right, but it's that vacant
That's
vacant piece that's wooded, that's down the road, the's nothing around it except
Mhm.
now that tent.
That's why we gotta
That's
put tents in there,
different.
cause then otherwise they said the vacant lot, we go
Yes,
put
correct.
100 tents in there, cause we have no regulation.
So maybe
on it.
adding verbiage of,
It's a
If it
vacant
has a
lot
resident,
a resident home
residence on it.
improvement. Correct.
or a pole barn with a bathroom, because that was that other guy.
That's across the
Right.
road, correct?
Right.
Still
They're two
continuing
parcels, they're
parcels.
two
Correct,
different
yes,
parcels.
yes, I understand that. And it
Mm-hmm.
has that improvement with bathroom facilities. So you could well, you can't really consider that as a living residential home.
That would be contiguous though, even if it's across the street.
Right, and you can homestead, a parcel that's not connected to your homestead. I know the ag district, I believe, there's some verbiage about that, yeah. So, maybe
But
if
if
you're
you should-
considered that that's owned.
If you strike out tents and still leave in septic, toilets, because you're saying somebody wants to buy this vacant lot and own it, but they only can camp on it with what? So a tent, as long as they have bathroom facilities and stuff, I think in the thing it states permitted uses, it lists off campers and everything, they just really need to strike out tents.
Well, I appreciate the comments out in the public, but we do as a board have to keep this within ourselves here. What if we did a motion not to enforce the permit requirement, for tents on parcels that have official bathroom facility, what do I wanna say, a permitted bathroom, up
That's
to
why
code
this-
bathroom facility,
not to, for tents that are being used as sleeping
Yeah, but that's what, if you look up camping, it's sleeping. Because I actually got a
But
comment, a
not
question,
cooking and not using it for,
I got a question
But
from,
then Dave's gonna police it, are they cooking on it, are they just
that's
sleeping?
right.
I mean, that's.
See, I have lots of ideas, but no solutions.
We went through all this at the planning commission.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did.
so,
I'm sure you
does that
did.
sound like that would work? Board motion not to,
Until we have a.
Until you have a complaint.
Yeah.
board motion to not enforce the permit requirement for tents on any lot that has a, what's the word I wanna say?
I want some-
License, not license, up to code,
Residential.
bathroom facility. So that guy with the pole barn, he has a pole barn, he had to get a
But
permit
it
from the
is
building department.
attached, it is attached to the, it is taxed as real property there, it's attached to, so if it's a building, obviously, that's being assessed as a, you know, pole barn or whatnot,
Okay,
I would say that it be considered like a residential home, so if it has the bathroom and stuff, and it is part of the person across the street.
okay,
You know
put
what
all
I'm
that
saying?
into a
It's-
motion.
So moved.
Maybe have a warehouse.
But I see where that guy's coming from.
I do
I mean,
too.
he has a home, he owns the lot across the street,
And it has a bathroom.
and it
facility.
has a
Or he
facility
could,
for that.
even then, you know, if he didn't have the pole barn, he could just walk across the street to the bathroom, it's adjoining, maybe that's the word, adjoining. You know what I mean?
Well,
So-
that's where that continuous lot comes into play too. Granted, there's a street now that breaks that up, but it's still owned as to the same owner, so yeah, I believe, you know, they're gonna use the facilities on the home. So, yeah, let's exclude tents
So would that be?
on unimproved residential lots.
I mean, we gotta define improved, that's why I wanna say that has a up-to-code bathroom facility. Right?
That's as easy,
Yeah.
yeah, what you just said is easy,
Up to-
yes.
That meets the Montcalm County Health Department's requirements.
Requirements.
Or be certified by.
Requirements and standards for,
Requirements
Yeah.
for bathroom. Okay. So not enforce the permit requirement for tents on parcels that have a bathroom facility,
Approved by the health
that
department.
meets the Montcalm County requirements for such.
for sanitation.
Is it health department or is it building department, if you
That's
got?
health.
It's health department.
What about
Yeah.
plumbing?
Plumbing's, well,
Building.
the
That-
plumbing is,
Building department.
That's all part
inspected
of,
by the county.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, that's two things we're talking here, health is for the septic and the building department, you gotta get your plumbing permit.
No, thing
It's-
is, yeah, now, if you, add on to your house, you have to get a permit from the county for a bathroom too. But it has to meet
Health department's
there
the
are
requirements.
lots
health
of
department, so
subjects.
large of a septic tank and, all that, and that comes from the health department. So I think both of them, yes.
That have. The requirements of health department, health and safety.
That pretty much defines it.
Pending. Alright, I think I got this. So I make a motion to not enforce the permit requirement for tents on parcels that have a bathroom facility that meets the requirements of the Montcalm County Health and Building Departments pending review by the planning commission. If they feel we should totally just take it out of there, then, but that motion is not for the permits, you still have to comply. You can't put 5 tents out there, you're still subject to the rules, we're just not gonna require a permit in this first year and see how it goes, assuming the planning commission is good with this. Want me to reread it again?
Please.
Motion to not enforce the permit requirement for tents on parcels that have a bathroom facility that meets the requirements of the Montcalm County Health and Building Departments pending planning commission review. Is there support for that?
Support.
Okay. Motion's been made and supported, further discussion, so again, if you wanna put a tent out there, you still have to read the rules. You can't put 5 tents out there, you know, but we're not gonna enforce the permits, until the planning commission gets a chance to see if they concur and add that into the ordinance. Further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Date changes, and then we'll have to figure out the posting requirements, on the permits themselves. So this permit has been, approved already, and we'll post it on the website, but I do see something we missed after some changes were made. We don't wanna give the wrong impression here. Sketch the RV unit location on the lot and placement of porta-johns and outside toilets. That needs to go, because we don't allow those. So I make a motion that we update the, permit application to remove the part that says in placement of porta-johns and outside toilets. Is there support? Motion's made and supported. Further discussion?
One question, I thought we put on here for the camping dates, no more than 14, and I don't see where that is, you know what?
Oh, like you want it to say, one
14
minute.
per camping
Cause
season.
you got camping dates, but there's no.
So we need to say max 14 days in calendar year.
Okay, that's 14.
Okay. I'd like to amend my motion, to both remove the placement of the porta-johns and outside toilets language and add a maximum of 14 days in a calendar year to the application. Is there support to that amendment?
I'll support.
Motion's been made and supported. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Too good. Last item, which I added, was fee schedule amendments. So, in talking to our attorney, about our fees, I looked at what we had last adopted in October of 2023, and anything you see in here in red is a proposal, to be changed. I've added the camping, that's gonna need to be changed to $25. For each permit. One thing she said that we need to make sure we have on here, we had special land use and rezonings considered by the planning commission at the $500, but we could also get requests for text amendments or planned unit developments or private roads, things that are very involved and have a lot of administrative costs. So on the right column there, I would propose that we add in, after special land use and rezoning, text amendments, site plan reviews, planned unit developments, that's what PUD stands for, and private roads, under that the $500 application fee. And we've always just said plus any actual costs incurred by the township, because you can very easily rack up attorney or planner or engineer cost on these, so we just say plus actual costs. She said we needed to define that better in the form of an escrow deposit. So I took the language that we already had in our wind ordinance about escrow deposits and put that in here, which just basically says, application fee plus an escrow deposit if deemed necessary by the township board and paid by the applicant to cover actual cost. I should put estimated actual cost incurred by the township, including but not limited to legal, engineering, professional costs, publication and noticing costs, planning commission costs, and any other administrative costs. The township may draw from the escrow account to reimburse any of its costs or expenses incurred in reviewing, processing, and evaluating the application. The township may require the applicant to replenish the account at any time to ensure sufficient balance. The township instructs the applicant to replenish the account, and the applicant fails to do so within 14 days after receiving notice, and the township has no further obligation to process the application until the escrow account is replenished. Any funds in the escrow account that exceed the township's actual cost after the application is approved or denied and after any and all appeals have been exhausted, will be returned to the applicant. The township will provide an itemized statement to the applicant upon request. So that, I just pulled that language, just so we don't have to go look it up every time to put on our fee schedule, so it's clear to people. When they're asking for these things to be considered, there could be a whole lot more that goes into it. We can't just say, yep, you know, we'll cover it. So, adding that on the right column, and then on the left column, just I added the multiple family for zoning permits. We didn't have that before. The site plan review, I moved to the right column. Temporary use permits are, discussed in section 309. If somebody wants to, their house burns down and they wanna put a single wide in while they're rebuilding, section 3.09 talks about an escrow requirement there. And then the camping I added, which that would change to $25. And then we still have not determined fees for wind and solar, whether that's, private use or commercial use, so that would be something we need to come up with at a future date, not this meeting, too much going on. But we need to make these fees clear, otherwise, if we just say plus actual costs, you know, actually, it's just not clear, so, any comments on this?
When you're talking about escrow, is there an amount or a percentage that you're thinking of?
Well, we would have to determine that,
Okay.
and that's why I would say cover estimated actual costs, so the township board would have to, or somebody, Dave, whether that's me and Dave, if you guys want to designate me to work with them on that, if we think, yeah, between all of the costs we're gonna have and an estimate of how much we're gonna have to ask the attorney to cover our tails, we would come up with an estimate that would, for each particular circumstance.
Okay.
Had something, I know you said you're gonna have, come up later on with the cost for, solar and wind. I know in Montcalm, well, in this area, they haven't had any permits, but Home Township, they're putting in a solar farm. Well, it's,
Commercial one,
yeah,
Okay.
commercial, so
do you know what
it's-
their permit fee, or escrow, or permit? Or-
they have an attorney involved in the middle
Yeah.
of it. I have to turn it, because they weren't ready for
I
it.
think in the wind, it says the escrow, because that's big dollars to do something like that, but I don't know that it was addressed in commercial. We may need to look into that, probably commercial solar. We may need to make those consistent, but as far as the application fee, which is kind of the general administration of somebody's gotta look at this, process it, make copies, print, you know, that's kind of what the fee itself is designed to cover, but then you have, these are
Right.
more and more interest in developing things, we need to make sure that we're covering our costs. None of us are, aside from Dave, as far as zoning experts in these matters, we need to make sure we have, our attorney involved in that stuff, so. Any other questions? And I would like to make a motion, to adopt the updated fee schedule as presented, with changing the camping, to the $25. Is there support for that?
Support?
Motion's been made and supported. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Myers?
Yes.
Solom? Yes. Imhoff?
Yeah.
Burnwald?
Yes.
Clark Hubbard, yes. Motion carries. So we'll pretty this up and get it posted on the website and get a copy to you too, Dave. Okay. I think we've gotten everything that was on the new business. So that puts us into final public comment, which we always hold a public comment at the end of all of our meetings for any topic you so desire to speak on. So go ahead and open that up, 3 minutes. Please state your name and your township.
I'll speak, cause I'm shy. Does my 3 minutes start all over again, or do I have to?
You get a brand new
start-
3 minutes.
Wait, let me program it in my phone.
Lane Lepping from Lakeview once again, Cato Township. Matt, were you the one in charge of that?
I was thinking.
Sweet glory, man. I sat here and I looked at that and I thought, February, March, April, May, 3 months ago. And we just went through Macker here in Lakeview. and we got Memorial Day coming up. I had kept in touch with the U.S. Angling on the World Ice Fishing stuff going on, just to kind of keep everybody abreast to it. I tippy-toed into the ice fishing tournament part of things, and I didn't get involved in it, but somehow or another I got baptized with it just by tippy-toeing into it. Joe Perez jumped into the macker with both feet or Ben, I'm sorry, not Joe.
Sure did.
Ben dove into it and embraced it and succeeded phenomenally. If you weren't here in Lakeview, watch the macker just do it this last weekend. So we're just rocking it in town, having fun. To update you on ice fishing, I looked on my phone, May 3rd, finally I get this response from a guy named Joe Martinez. Joe is an ice fisherman on the U.S. ice fishing team. He is the president of the U.S. ice fishing team. He was the one guy that finally per se floated to the top or to the bottom, that all the other higher ups from the U.S. Angling who were here in town during the international event, who finally said, please respond to this Leppink guy, because we're tired of him emailing us every month after this event. Get him off our back. And so Joe finally emailed me and said, hey, I'm the president of the ice fishing team, and we are very excited to keep Lakeview involved in this. Call me. And I didn't know he was from Utah until I finally said, we really ought to hook up and get a beer sometime and talk about this. And he said, I like that, but I'm in Utah, but I am coming to Michigan sometime soon, and so we'll have to hook up. When he and I got done chatting about 2-3 weeks ago, it was on a Saturday morning, and his 3-year-old daughter was running around, and he apologized on a text. He said, man, I'm really sorry for my daughter running around and messing up the phone call. And I said, you never have to apologize for a 3-year-old on a phone call like that. But his last words on the text were, Lakeview, home of the U.S. ice fishing team, has a nice ring to it. So seriously be ready for it, because these guys are hot and furious to have us embrace them again.
Nice.
The international event, that was a shooting star. That probably will never, ever, 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 ever happen again. He did say that international event, it took 12 years for it to come back to the United States. They're looking at trying to get it every 3 years to come back to the US. Now, we pulled it off. Who knows, maybe they'll say, hey, let's bring it back to Lakeview again. I'm just saying that. I don't have any foreboding, but the US team would like to have us be their adopted home.
Nice.
They could do qualifying events here, and for that matter, we told them let's do what we can come up with. So if you hear more rumblings in the jungle, you know where it kind of came from.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing
So-
that, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once?
Matt Hubbard, Cato Township.
Oh,
I just
good.
wanna thank the planning commission for all their hard work. It's not easy, can't please everybody, but you guys did a really good job.
Yes, I appreciate you guys
Second
very
that.
much too. And I didn't have necessarily complaint, I said myself, I didn't get involved. You guys did all the work, and then I just came in and criticized it, but with no solutions. But I just wanted to put those things out there so that for further discussion throughout this year as we use it as a trial period. But I really appreciate, I know how much hard work it is.
I'm
Jack
gonna,
Bigler, Cato Township, I have no skin in the game in the camping part of it, but like Ginger said, if I owned a lot and had to pay a camping fee I pay taxes in the community, and if I had to pay camping fee to come in and camp on my own lot, I'd be pretty upset. And you guys, everybody that comes here and camps, coming into town, spending money in your community. I realize you're trying to discourage the bad apples, but we have rules to discourage bad apples, you know, and I can understand the 14-day thing, because you don't want people just living there. But, you know, you kinda gotta think that route too, because, I mean, the guy that doesn't like the camper next door, if I was those people, I put up a circus tent. You just said we could put up tents, so I put up a circus tent. You know, wedding venue, something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, zoning is tough.
I can see, I'm just saying, you know, those people are coming in spending money. And, yeah, if I owned a lot and I couldn't put a camper on it, why own the lot? They're gonna say, I'll buy property somewhere else, I don't need Cato Township. So I have no skin in the game, we don't
Nope.
camp. I'm just saying,
Appreciate the
I think
outside
that's
look at
kinda,
it, you know.
what Ginger said, you know, if they own that lot and they pay taxes on it, I ought to go put a camper in. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yep.
Jamie Snyder, Cato Township. I agree with what Ginger said, but mostly I wanna piggyback off of Matt and say thank you guys for allowing us to have comments and kind of interact with the process here. It really, helps build character and relations within the community, so I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I also agree with Ginger as well, and the 14 days I understand because you don't want somebody taking residence up in a camper, but you still have the 14 days, so they can still put the camper up to the guy or gal that's complaining, so it's not really going to make him any happier, and you guys are like sweating over a lot of things over one person versus how many other people that have no problems with camping. I mean, and I'm not a camper either, but I'm looking from the outside in, a lot of people enjoy camping, and it's just that one person that's complaining, so I think you kinda need to remember that too.
Yeah, it was more than just the one person at the public hearing, I think you guys got more, but I think once people
There was
understood,
quite a few people there. that
quite a
were-
few people that kinda were putting the
Anything,
pressure
they
on.
wanted no camping.
They wanted no
Period.
camping, and
Anywhere.
yes, we tried to find a happy
So
medium.
Yeah,
without-
we tried to find middle of the road. Tried to get the best of both sides.
Somewhere.
That's, I think, what we did, with maybe a few
Yeah.
minor changes we
I
can
mean,
make.
you have to, there's all sorts of things, you have to get a zoning permit, if you want a sign, you have to get a zoning permit, if you wanna build a house or a pole barn, you have to get a permit, so, you know, there's a line of camping early, you know, so it's not like, we're a zone township, and at some point, the people of Cato Township voted to be a zone township, so that's why we have permits, you know, if we were unzoned, it would be a free-for-all. So we try, we're trying our best, anybody else, before I did have one thing that I forgot to bring up. We'll go ahead and close final public comment, but one thing I did wanna just clarify, I kinda have my thoughts, but I want the board, since Dave is here. So I did have somebody reach out, with a question, Pat Buckholz, concerning the use of vacant land in the Lake Residential District. If a vacant landowner or his guest uses the owner's vacant lot for a day, i.e. for boating, fishing, etc., but only brings a vehicle, not a tent, RV, tent, etc., will they need to acquire a camping permit? And this is for camping activities, and camping means staying overnight in your vehicle, right? So I did reply, but I just wanted to get the board's, consensus on that. And then she also did ask a question, overall she was asking does the day use of a vacant lot count towards 14 permitted usage days? And it's not usage days, it's camping activities. Also, are there any regulations for guests leaving watercrafts on docks on vacant lots? And to my knowledge, the township doesn't have any regulations on docks.
To my understanding with other townships, that we can't regulate the water,
Yeah.
that's,
Can I ask, does the Lake Association, they do permits for docks, or is that something?
It is in Honeymoon Heights, as long as our people are paid, we give them a permit to use our docks. We
To
have
use
our own
your
personal
docks,
docks
okay.
in Honeymoon Heights that belong to our parks.
Okay, so that was just another question that was brought up in, on docks. So anyways, we can move on from that. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there
this
support
meeting.
for this? And there's further discussion on this? All in favor on this? Aye. All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.